it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to have a challenge and a struggle and own up to that and face it and put it out on the table. You'd be surprised how many people are willing to help.
My name is Merrill Dubrow, CEO of Mark Research. I'm a 35-year veteran of the research and insights community and the host of our podcast, On the Mark. On the Mark is focusing on executives and thought leaders in the world, sharing their insights, strategies, and personal experiences. I promise this podcast will be filled with tough, pointed questions with real, insightful, and emotional answers. Today's guest is Steve Schlesinger, CEO of Schlesinger Group and my BFF. Steve, welcome back to the On the Mark podcast.
Well, of course, happy to be here, and I'm actually hoping for a third invite down the road.
Yeah, that's not happening. We're going to probably end it. Well, as you know, we're only doing 56 of these, 56, one for each year that Mark Research has been in business. And you were our first guest on the On the Mark podcast. You actually launched it a few months back. And it's interesting, Steve, because I think you're aware of this. You still have the most views of the first 16 episodes that we have posted.
Well, how about that? Well, look, I enjoyed the first round, and I'm sure I'm going to enjoy this round as well. And frankly, I've enjoyed all these that you've been doing. So thanks for doing them for all of us as listeners.
Thanks. Well, listen, a lot has happened since the first one we did in January. Besides the New England Patriots not winning the Super Bowl this year, unbelievable, and a few other things in the sports world. But the pandemic, COVID-19 is kind of wreaking havoc on the world. And I really wanted to chat about that and where we are with Qualitative today. I mean, because you know that I've always called you openly the largest qualitative company in the world. And the reason I wanted you back is, unfortunately, with COVID-19, just to have the listeners hear from you, your perspective on where we are with COVID-19 and where you think it's going to be moving forward. So let's start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It is interesting, the fact that we did this first one in January and the year started off with a bang, and it really felt quite good, moving through the first quarter, and then all of a sudden the virus hits and everything sort of gets turned on its head. This, of course, for our qualitative business has been a big challenge. In-person work started fading in the early parts of March. So the first couple of weeks were okay. And then as we progressed through the month, things started to dissipate. And then, of course, April and now looks like May will really be pretty much non-existent for the in-person qualitative. I'd say that, for the most part, many of those projects got moved over to a digital alternative, whether that was webcam or TDIs or utilizing some of the platforms that are out there. And then, of course, there were a bunch of projects that got postponed or canceled along the way. And the biggest challenge, I'd say, for us, in managing through this is really trying to understand not just when the end date is for it, but what it's going to look like when it really starts coming back. Will in-person have changed for 2 months or 3 months? Will it have been impacted for the balance of 2020? Will it carry over to 2021? Well, frankly, it changed forever in terms of this being a bit of a watershed moment. So, we're wrestling with that every day. There's signs of optimism, but there's also plenty of things to be concerned about. And we're trying to manage through that both for short-term and long-term planning.
So let's talk about, you bring up a lot of good points and certainly a lot of follow-up questions. Where are we in terms of clients today? With 8 or 9 days left in April, are they starting to call up and book and hold in-person research in May, or are they all waiting till June?
Yeah, so we've got some bites for May. Surely the later part of the month. I think a lot of the concern is around ultimately what the states and or countries might do related to stay-at-home provisions. I think it's really hard to tell right now if May will yield much in person. I do believe that we may see a few projects book and happen. I think June will be a more realistic month in terms of things coming back. A lot of it really depends on when the stay-at-home restrictions get lifted, people's perceptions, the type of research that our clients want to do, and can it be executed effectively? And then of course there's all of the concerns around second waves of the virus, coming back too soon. You can add to that the component of participant behavior. Will participants feel comfortable coming to a facility, participating in research, even with all of the proper safety precautions in place, making sure we have a secure facility for people to visit and feel comfortable with. So there's a lot of question marks there, and I think that's what's making this incredibly challenging right now. Meryl, just before you go on, the one thing I want to add, though, about clients is that one of the things that has been interesting is that in the first, couple weeks of March and early April, people weren't even talking about in-person research when we were really in the I call the early stages of the virus. Now that we're starting to see some states consider opening or people talking about being on the other side of the curve, what we're hearing is a lot of clients talking about when can we get back? When is it possible that we can start doing in-person research and your facilities will be open? So that to me is where the optimism comes in. Now, again, the hard question to answer there is how robust will that be and how fast will that come into play? The one other thing I want to add is that we just got word this morning that our German offices are actually going to be open as of next week. And the ban has been lifted there. Now, again, doesn't mean that work will come flying in for the facilities, but, in certain places, we're a little bit further along than we are in others, and Germany happens to be one of them.
That's great, Steve. So in terms of Germany, let's stay on that for half a second. Do you envision your whole staff coming back, or are you going to play a little more conservative in terms of, hey, guys, let's have 10% of our staff back or 30% of our staff back, or maybe we have some staff come in Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and we have others come in Tuesday, Thursday. How are you handling that?
Yeah, so we're taking a little bit of a more conservative approach when it comes to our operations staff. Our entire operations team has been working, from home remotely, since the, early days or the middle days of March, I'd say. It's been working fine. We've had no issues. Execution's great, efficiency's great. So we're going to probably take a conservative approach with that group and allow them to stay there probably until June and maybe even longer, depending on how things play out. But that's our plan today. As far as the facility goes, our goal is really to bring people in on an as-needed basis based on projects in the facility. So as states or countries open up, our facilities will be open for business, with the proper precautions in place, and ultimately we'll bring staff in based on client need.
Yeah, it's interesting because you use some good words there. That's the plan today, which obviously insinuates the plan could change tomorrow and the next day and the next day as things unfold, and probably do. How often, obviously with the PE company that's involved with your company now, how often are you guys redoing budgets and are you reforecasting, and how often are you on the phone with them and having meetings? Is it every day? Are you reforecasting every week?
So we have a COVID team, which is made up of a variety of different stakeholders within our organization. And we meet every other day, usually for anywhere from a half hour to an hour, to discuss changes that might be happening based on state or country mandates. We talk about staff, we talk about business volume, and where we're seeing activity and so on and so forth. And I wouldn't say that we're recasting budgets on that frequent of a basis, but what we're doing is we're looking at revenue and projections every week, of course. We're measuring activity every day. And then we have a variety of contingency plans that we've built to sort of monitor the progress of our forecasts and levers that we might need to pull or to put into place related to those forecasts. So whether that might mean increases or decreases of staff levels, it might mean how we might look at real estate and or revenue targets. It could be the sort of the migration of work between in-person to digital on the qual side, how the quant data collection is behaving. So yeah, we are looking at these things incredibly frequently and making adjustments as we go. The one thing we're trying not to be is be incredibly jumpy. So, we don't want to be reactive every day. What we want to do is try to make decisions based on, trends over a series of days or even a week or two, just to make sure that we're making the right decisions and we're keeping our business as healthy as possible, not just for today, but also for the days and weeks to come.
That's great. So we're all doing research on research. We've done some stuff in the healthcare space. We've done some stuff in the animal health space that was very well received by a lot of our clients. I know that and I thought I read that you guys are doing a research sentiment tracker. Can you speak to that a little bit? What was some of the takeaways and the aha moments?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think that there's two pieces of research that we've been doing. One is really just, more or less talking about COVID-19 and just the impact it's having on people. And then the other one is really related to participation in research. I would say that, when it comes to just overall COVID-19 sentiment, obviously there's a lot of fear associated with it. Lots of concerns around, just sort of the economy, health, wellness, when this is going to end, and so on. And we just got done with our second wave of it. I would say that, things look like they're improving. I haven't seen the full data set from the second wave, but, it feels like things are getting better in people's minds. But I do think that there's still a ways to go when it comes to how people will feel, in the weeks and the months, and sort of how their behaviors may change. I would tell you that, there's just some interesting anecdotes around, probably the fact of people having more human connection within their household, eating meals as families where they may not have been doing that as oftenly before. Obviously, the use of phones and video chats and virtual happy hours and a variety of other things that we were just sort of trying to gauge just to make it a little bit more interesting for the respondents. And and I think that this is a really challenging time for people, and I think it's not going to be short-lived. I think this is going to last for a while in terms of how it impacts people.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's funny because, or maybe not so funny, but a couple friends of mine in the last 3 or 4 days, not that they're going through it, but they said divorce rate's going to go sky high too from this.
There's going to be a lot of both sides of that. And to me personally, the thing that I really worry about a lot is mental health.
Yep.
And just how this impacts people from a stress and an anxiety level. And, everything plays into that, from health to economics to, sort of just, the social distancing and the isolation. And, it really is, it does create lots of challenges.
Yeah, it's interesting because the mental health aspect is something that's near and dear because, through this, I have not had a lot of sleep. Some nights I sleep 2 or 3 nights. My head is spinning. I can't turn it off. My brain is just continues to think about what if scenarios, and it's just everything that you can imagine. Before the pandemic, I used to do 19,000 steps a day. Now I average almost 25,000. It's just ridiculous. How are you handling that? I mean, how are you handling the pressure, the mental health? Because your organization is, how big are you guys now, Steve, in terms of size?
Probably a little bit over 200 million of revenue, and somewhere around, I think, 1,400 people.
Right. So think about that. 200 million in revenue. And before the pandemic, before your last few acquisitions, which we'll get to, how big were you when you sold the company? 120?
Yeah, about 130.
Okay, so 130. So we'll get to that in a second. But how are you handling the mental health aspect of it, the pressure?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, it's really, I've been pretty busy all day long, between video chats and phone calls and just typical work stuff. So my Monday through Fridays are quite full. I try to get out every day to take a walk, whether it's 30 minutes to an hour. I live in New York City, so I get out and walk around. It's like a ghost town here, which is pretty strange, but it's a good thing to be able to do that. I'd say that for me, it's just trying to relax a little bit. It's just trying to keep my head clear and think about, sort of what I can control and what I can't control, talking to family, talking to friends, really trying to stay grounded, be thankful for what I do have. Because, there are a lot of people out there who, obviously are have a lot more challenges than I do. And, being in New York City, I've obviously have both family and friends who've been affected by the virus. Thankfully, all have recovered well, but some of them were quite sick for a number of weeks, and it's scary. And these are just, regular people like you and I. They're not necessarily people who are in their 70s or 80s or have any real sort of sensitivities that you would think would cause a bigger issue. So, it's tough.
Thanks. All right, let's talk about the acquisition. Since we last spoke, you bought Market Cube, and then we'll get to the other big one in a second. But let's talk a little bit about Market Cube. What interested you in that acquisition, and how's the first few months been going with them?
Yeah, so I mean, Market Cube, was part of our strategic vision in getting, sort of stronger and more sizable in the quantitative data collection space. They came across our radar, and we got to know them and got to understand their business a lot more, and actually really, really excited about adding them to our family. Great group of people, primarily based in India with some folks in the US and Europe, really service a different group of clients than we typically service, but also give us the opportunity to do more with our client base. They're very technology and automation focused, which I think is a great addition to what we're trying to do. And I've just been wildly impressed with the group overall. The leaders, the entire team, they're very focused, very disciplined, really excited about doing more with us and helping us drive our business. And so far, it's been really, a wonderful relationship. It's only 2 months now in. We've already got a lot accomplished. Their business is actually off to a great start this year, and they're actually doing well even through the COVID-19 crisis. So, business is up well, and they had a great year last year. So I think we're building on that momentum, and we'll hopefully continue to do that in the years to come.
That's great. Well, only success. You do an amazing job integrating all of your acquisitions into the portfolio. You and Mike Sullivan and Rob Ramirez and your entire leadership team, I commend for, think about that, Steve. You've grown the business from 130 million to 200 million. That's over a 50% increase in less than a year. That's unbelievable. What a challenge, but what a feather in your cap. And listen, 24 hours ago, you announced you bought 2020, which is, again, congratulations. We know Jim Bryson and Isaac Rogers, terrific people. Talk a little bit about that acquisition.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're super excited about this. We've known Jim and Isaac and the 2020 group for a long time. We've talked to Jim through the years about, combining our businesses, and we finally got it done this year. Timing's a little funny. You never know. These things take time, and we started this back at the end of last year, and, lo and behold, we closed the deal and announced it during this crazy, virus crisis. But, surely they're doing really well right now. So much of Qualitative has moved to the digital side, and 2020 has been a really strong brand with a great set of products and platforms for digital qualitative. And so they continue to move along incredibly well. They had a great March and April. We're excited to have them as part of our family. We know that they round out our capability set incredibly well. So now not only are we incredibly strong globally on the in-person side, but now we've got this great toolkit and team that does amazing digital work. They just added over the shoulder to their portfolio. So, there's a lot there. We're excited about it. Isaac will be a great leader within our organization and in his new role as Chief Innovation Officer. And we're excited about that. I think that there's going to be a lot that we're going to be able to do together. And we're just starting to get to know the team, and the team's getting to know us. So, we're in early stages of introductions, understanding each other's businesses. We'll start working on integration plans. And really, the big thing for us in all of this is always about growth. It's about how do we take Market Cube, how do we take 2020 and help them accelerate their growth and really create even that much more of a dynamic company, which makes us as Schlesinger Group a more dynamic partner for our clients.
That's great, Steve. I want to follow up on you said rounding out the portfolio on 2020, which is great. Well, let's assume there's a jagged edge on that rounding of the portfolio. What type, and I won't ask you who you're going to buy next, but I will ask you what type of company helps you round out, smooth out that jagged edge that's probably little left on that circle. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be things that we're going to want to do that we haven't gotten done yet. Absolutely, this story is not completely finished. We're going to be looking at more growth opportunities over the next year or two for sure, and probably beyond that. And they're all going to exist in a variety of ways. Of course, organic growth and talent acquisitions, getting more people into the team, but we'll also be looking at companies, and I think that they'll be in a variety of different sort of areas. I think tech is surely important to us, and the ability to add technology and platforms to our existing business, and they may fall either in qual or quant. They might be around reporting or automation. I think geography is another important piece for us. I mean, we're strong in the US and Europe, but we still have gaps in both places, but even more so in Asia Pac and Latin America. So I'm sure those will be on our radar. And just other things that could be interesting that really allow us to service our clients better and also faster. I'd say agility and the ability to deliver, as quickly as we can, with, of course, keeping quality in mind, will be a motivation as well.
That's great. We're going to play a little game, Steve. Higher or lower? You ready?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to end the year at $200 million on the dot on 2020. Congratulations. But that's not the question I want to ask. I want to ask at the end of 2023, if I said that Schlesinger Group is a $500 million company, are you going higher or lower?
Tough question. I'd probably say in 2023, probably lower.
Okay. How much lower?
I think I have to answer that with a little bit more than a number. I think the challenge for us is that if you put that number at 300 million, I would say the answer would be higher. I think the challenge for me to predict it today are two things. One is, how does in-person rebound off of the COVID-19 scenario, and what kind of momentum gets built through 21 and 22? And then I'd also say, what else comes across our transom related to acquisition opportunities, and how can we, continue to grow our revenue and our business through acquisition? I think if things play out like they played out over the last, year or so, I would say without a doubt we could easily be, at 400 million. But again, I'd say that anything north of 300, we'd be pretty happy by 2023.
Well, I would assume, and I'm only hearing a little speckle, that a lot of companies are for sale right now, Steve. And especially in your space, let me take it back, because your space is every space now. My bad. Is there a lot of, how many deals are you seeing in a typical month come across your desk?
I mean, we're probably looking at, anywhere from, on a lighter month, a couple deals, and then on a busier month, maybe it's up to, 5 to 8. But I think what you have to remember is that when I say look, I mean, there may be, 10 reach outs in a given month, but what really applies to us and what really makes sense for us to look at might only be 2 to 4 of those. And of those, it's a question of really, what makes it through that first pass of, really having an initial conversation, and then from there you take it a little further. But, I also would say that this is going to be an interesting next few months, because we're in a weird time with the virus and people's businesses. And I'm not really sure how that's going to play out related to acquisition opportunities and acquisition activity and the ability to, ultimately close deals. Now, more towards the end of the year, maybe more so, and surely moving into next year, I think it'll be hopefully more back to a normal cadence. But for right now, it's we're all in uncharted territory, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
That's great. Let's end with this, Steve. I know you're a very giving individual. You have an enormous presence in the insights community. You talk to a lot of people, but this will give you a chance to reach even a lot more. What advice do you have to CEOs and executive leadership teams that continue to struggle through this? Any advice come to mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd say for one is, make sure you lean on people for support. I would make sure you leverage your advisors if you have any, and if you don't, definitely consider getting some. I'm talking to people on a very, very regular basis, every day, clients, colleagues, people who are in similar positions, people in other industries who might be in leadership roles. I mean, there's a lot of lessons to be learned. I was sat on a board call yesterday, and 3 or 4 really, interesting nuggets from people in terms of how they're managing through this. And the other thing too is, and this isn't even just for this, scenario that we're dealing with, but it's really all the time, which is it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to have a challenge and a struggle and own up to that and face it and put it out on the table. You'd be surprised how many people are willing to help. And whether you're big or you're small, no matter what type of company, you really have, we all have challenges and also opportunities, and it's good to have the support as we navigate through them.
Steve, I can't thank you enough for your time today. It's a sequel. Thanks again for listening to Steve Schlesinger. This is the On the Mark podcast. My name is Merrill Dubrow. Have a great day.
Thanks, Merrill.